Welcome to Perspectives with Pinnacle, exploring the evolving world of healthcare. Let's navigate complexities and unlock new perspectives together.
They say necessity is the mother of all invention. In healthcare, I think necessity often reveals the gaps we've learned to work around for far too long. Today's conversation is about one of those gaps, the simple but profound ability for a patient or resident to call for help when they need it most. For many people with limited mobility, progressive neurological conditions, spinal cord injuries, or other physical limitations, the traditional nurse call button is not always accessible. And when help is technically available, but practically out of reach, that becomes a safety issue, a dignity issue, and a workflow issue for the care team. Our guest today is Dr. Bob Kaiser, founder of WillCall, a voice-activated nurse call solution born from a deeply personal family experience and built around a very practical idea. Sometimes the best innovation is not more complexity. It's giving someone back their voice. So, Bob, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited for the conversation. Before we get into it, I'd love if maybe you just introduce yourself, your background, and a little bit about the company.
Well, great. I'm really glad to be here today. It's an honor to sit here and talk about things that we're passionate about. I know you're passionate about what you do, and likewise, I'm very passionate about what I do. So my background, it's kind of mixed. You know, I've got a wide variety of things. I've been an entrepreneur pretty much most of my life. This is my fifth startup company, okay? But generally speaking, I've worked for some big companies also. I've worked for Hewlett-Packard and Apple Computer. I worked for Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. At the same time, these startups have always been very, very rewarding and very fulfilling to me. And so think of me as an entrepreneur. And, you know, I met you years ago through the university, had a great relationship there. And I thought I'd just be at the university, you know, teaching the rest of my life. And here I find myself in a very unique, special set of circumstances, which might be the best thing that's ever happened to me.
That's outstanding. And I got to tell you, you know, it's so awesome and kind of serendipitous in terms of how we met. And so you've been not only a great friend and mentor for me over the years, but it's allowed me to see from the very early days, the startup of this company. And I knew right away that you were doing something that I cannot believe has taken us this long to figure out. And that's what's been so exciting for me to watch. And so just to watch what you've been able to accomplish and to watch the success, and we're going to get into it. But before we do, I think it'd be probably best to take a step back. So maybe tell us a little bit about Will, who he is and what happened. And then more importantly, when you realized that this wasn't just a family concern, but a broader healthcare issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. So my brother's name is Will. The product name is WillCall, and the company name is WillCall Incorporated, Texas Corporation. And Will, he's my older brother. He's 18 months older than me. People think we're twins because we look very much alike. And I always tell them that he's older, smarter, and better looking. So that's the buzz I use on that. But Will and I, we were both avid runners. We like to run, just like you. I know that you're a runner as well. And Will lived in China for 15 years. And he'd come over to run the San Francisco Marathon in the summer, and in the fall, he'd come run the Dallas Marathon with me. And in 2019, he came over to run the Dallas Marathon, flew back to Shenzhen, 3 days later, had a cerebral hemorrhage. Most people do not survive a cerebral hemorrhage. Maybe 1 out of 4 will. So I went to China, picked him up. He's back on his feet in about 10 days, got him on an airplane, brought him back to Dallas, Texas. Keep in mind, that's January of 2020. COVID was arriving. So Will moved into a high-rise condominium, lived there for 2 years. Everybody was locked in. Everything was just fine. He's recovering from his cerebral hemorrhage. I got him around to meet all my doctor friends and get all checked out and everything. So things were going good. And then he called me up one night and he says, "Hey, I'm dropping something with my left hand. I have a bad headache." He doesn't drive. So I said, "Get an Uber and go down to the hospital." It was New Year's Eve. By the way, I had him double vaccinated. I need to tell you that, double vaccinated. He sat in the ED department at the hospital for 5 hours and he got COVID. I didn't know it. He went back to his condo, stayed there a week and a half, didn't return my calls. So I went over there to check in on him and I found him all but dead. So 911, the next 65 days, he's on a ventilator in a hospital. And I didn't think he'd make it, and that's a long time to be on a ventilator. What he had, John, he had a cytokine storm. That's when your immune system overreacts. It threw off a couple strokes. He had a occipital lobe scope and also a prefrontal lobe stroke, and pretty much paralyzed him. Okay, so the first year we're in what I call the most acute critical care, where everybody's there taking care of you. You don't worry about anything like that. And then we move to a skilled nursing facility where it's a different world, and find out that it's really difficult for Will to get help. But it didn't really bother me that much. I just, that's the way it is here. I'm learning all about this. I wasn't familiar with any of this type of environment at all. So it's a whole new learning curve for me. Well, it so happens that 2 years ago, Will fell out of bed, busted his head, lying on the floor, yelling and screaming for help, and nobody came. He can't push a nurse call button. He can't, his hands don't allow him to push a nurse call button. Now, for those that don't know what a nurse call button is, if you watch something like Wheel of Fortune, the game show where you push a button, it's the same type of button, all right? And they call it a nurse call light or nurse call button. And the way it's laid out in the room, there is a panel behind your bed at the head of your bed where this cable plugs in and it has a little light on it. And if you push the button, the little light comes on and it rings a light down the hall at the nurse call station. And then ultimately a beep, beep, beep sound takes place and someone comes into the room and says, what do you need? What do you want? And they assist you. Well, that works pretty good for a lot of people if you can push the button. One of the disadvantages though, that little light's behind your bed, you don't know if the thing's working. So you can be pushing the button going, is it working? I have no idea whether it's working. So I looked at Will and I said, Will, we've got to figure out a way that you can call for help with dignity. It's not good to have to scream and holler, I need help down the hall, especially if your door is closed. How do you sit there? You're at the mercy of everybody. It's a terrible feeling. It's like being trapped and not being able to move and get out. It's just a terrible feeling. So I said, we're going to have to figure this out. And we did. And so I started off with some really stupid ideas. As fundamental as could be. I hate to embarrass anybody by telling you, but Alexa's got a door lock that you can say lock and unlock, okay? And they have these little pads that you can push, it has a little metal on it. So I got a door lock and I put up next to that pad and I hooked up to an Alexa in his room and I'd say, Will, say lock door. And he'd say the words lock door and that little deadbolt would come out and push that pad and turn on. Same thing as pushing the button, okay? And then to let go of the button, because you push the button, you have to let go of the button, you'd have to say, Alexa, unlock door, and give it a code, 9384, and unlock it, And that worked. And I thought, man, that's pretty good. Well, I got to get rid of this expensive lock, so I got a little card and programmed it. And I said, this is even cooler now. You don't have to say lock and unlock. You just say, Alexa, play red button. Boom, boom, it does it. Oh, this is wonderful. So I thought, I'm going to go over to the engineering department at the University of Texas, Dallas. And they have this great program over there. They bring, commercial companies in.
Yeah.
So I hired those guys. They gave me 5 engineers. I walked in there, John, and I said, I want you to make this work. It works with Alexa now. Make it work with Siri and make it work with Google. And they said, sir, and I am a registered professional engineer, so you need to give me a little bit of respect, please. They said, sir, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I said, why is that? And they said, would you drive a car where the brakes only work 80% of the time? You need this thing to be totally independent of any Wi-Fi or internet or anything like that. So we got at it, and these guys worked really great at it. So I had them for 6 months, and they kept innovating, and we worked up some prototypes. So at that point in time, I said, you know what? I now understand this isn't just a problem for my brother Will or other people like him. This could be a new standard of care. This is more about compliance and risk management than anything else. The law requires you to take care of these people.
Yes.
It's a must. Now, I don't want to go in and say everybody should replace their nurse call button with a will call device. Maybe it's too early to say that, but in the big picture, that's where I think it should go.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and I have loved watching that journey, and I want to take a kind of a step back first and talk about, um, for the longest time we assume, right, that if there is a nurse call button in the room, that there is access to care. But I think what you've highlighted is that that's a missed assumption. So it wasn't just about Will, but I've been in a hospital room with my mother, and we couldn't find the nurse call button. It had gotten the rope had gotten tangled around the bed, and we're looking for the button. And so
Yeah.
you started to see and hear stories from others about what they were experiencing, and that helped drive some
Yeah.
of the innovation, some of that.
Yeah, there's so many different. What if you're blind?
Yeah.
You can't find a nurse call button. What if you just have bad vision? You can't use a nurse call button. What if you're confused and you don't know where it is? What if it's lying on the floor and you reach down to get it and you fall out of bed and break your head open? Okay. So there's all types of risk factors that you have to consider. And those have to be looked at very seriously. The law requires the compliance, as you know, you're a compliance expert. The compliance law requires that you have a way to take care of your patients.
Right.
You must do that. All right. And so it's easy to sit there and say, tell the lie, lay a nurse call button on the bed, knowing no one can use it. But when somebody walks in to do the inspection, they go, well, it's not on the floor, so it's on the bed. Give them a check mark. Now, if it is on the floor, the bad news is you get a demerit on your CMS report. You get a 2% fine on your reimbursement. That's significant money. So from an administrator's perspective, forget about the care of the patient. Just from the care of the business, you want to make sure you're doing the very best job. The other factor is this. The people that do the real good work, the CNAs, the nurse assistants and the nurses, they have a workflow that they go through, okay? Will Call, our product, does not disrupt their workflow. You unplug that cable and you plug Will Call in the exact same jack, and they love it because it's nothing new to learn. It's consistent with their workflow process. So Will now can be treated just as well or unwell as any other patient there, okay? He gets treated normally. He gets his respect and dignity back. So that's a big factor as well. Then the third factor is the family member. I can't tell you how bad it feels to go home at night and go, I wonder if he's going to be okay tonight. I'm unsettled with this. But guess what? If you know that you've got a device in there and it works, you feel good as a family member.
Yeah.
You feel good about it. And quite often, it's a family member that buys the Will Call, and the administrator finds out about it and says, we want 2 more. We want 3 more. We want to add on to that. So I guess the point, John, is it's not just for an emergency situation. Will, he can't wipe his eyes. He can't blow his nose. He can't put on his glasses. He needs help throughout the day. Probably 10 or 15 times a day, he needs assistance. And the good news is he can ask for it when he needs it. And that's empowering to anybody to know that they're in charge of getting help when they need it. Yeah. That's such an empowering feeling there. So anyhow, we're looking at a bigger picture here now. Obviously, the space for this, the acute hospitals. Will was in a major hospital for 11 days last month. And I brought a Will Call in there and plugged it in. They loved it.
I bet they do.
So it worked right up there. They have these pillow devices that control your TV. It's a speaker put on your pillow, right? And you control your TV and volume and things like that. That's great if you have hands. And that's the standard in all the high acuity hospitals. There's an extra jack on the wall. Will Call just plugs right in. Doesn't interfere with anything, just works perfect. So there's that big market. There's 15,000 nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities around the United States. We haven't begun to look at the assisted living centers. The home market, we have a product now for the home market, the hospice market. And so our theme is the simplest way to call for help. Because when you need help, you don't want something complicated.
Absolutely.
You want the simplest way to do it. So that's kind of the background there.
Well, and I love that because, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So before we go too deep, I want to go back to the no Bluetooth, to the be able to operate independently, kind of universal. And then even from a compliance perspective, because this has to function with the current existing unit in the room from a compliance perspective. So you guys met all of those marks. Yeah. And then once you were able to do that, the adoption should continue to follow. But then how does somebody activate it? What do they need to do?
Yeah. So we talked about having Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and things like that. When I go see an administrator of a facility and I tell them about will call, they say, does it work on the internet with Wi-Fi? And I go, no. They go, hallelujah. Why is that? Oh, network concerns, viruses, patient history data, all kinds of things
Internet
we worry
of
about,
Things.
and this doesn't have any connection at all with anything on a network? No, nothing at all. Well, how does it work? I said, well, it's pretty simple. You simply say 3 key words, I need help. And when you say, I need help, unlike the nurse call button that you don't know if it's working because the little light's behind you, will call responds and it actually has a verbal message. It says, okay, I've called someone to help you. That relieves anxiety right away because you know that you put in a call for help and it's working.
Okay, I have called someone to help you.
And so that activates the system just as if you push the nurse call button, exactly the same way, okay? And so the little red light comes on. It's like being on an airplane. When you call for a flight attendant, you push the call button, the flight attendant comes and they clear. Same thing happens in your room. When you say, I need help, okay, I've called someone to help you. The little red light comes on. In the hallway, a little light comes on in the hallway at nighttime. The nurse call system's activated down the hall. It beep, beep, beeps. A CNA comes in, walks over to the side of the bed, pushes the clear button and says, what do you need? And takes care of you. So it's magnificently simple to use. Now, complications. What if you have a very weak voice? I need help. Or you can't position yourself. Well, we have a microphone that's built into will call. It has an extension microphone. I have a high sensitivity microphone that can pick up a sound 30 yards away if you want, and that can plug into the will call just as well. So we've been trying to address a number of these issues. My brother Will is a documentary expert on YouTube and YouTube TV and Netflix. He controls all that with an Amazon Fire TV. So it's all voice activated. So Will always has on the TV, which is making noise, and people come in the room. So we have uniquely identified the AI technology to make sure that we don't get very many false negatives. When you use the words, I need help, it works. If you said, I'm in the grocery store and I need help, it won't fire off. Okay.
Wow.
So we've dealt with a lot of these nuances, all these different types of things to really make it incredibly simple to use. To install will call, you simply take it out of the box and you plug it in the electrical outlet and you plug it in where the nurse call goes. There's no configuration. There's no work to do to make it work right. It works right out of the box, perfect every time.
I love this. And it's so interesting to see how far you guys have come. So it sounds to me that a lot of this iteration has been through lived experience as you've gone to market.
Yes.
And so then you've addressed all of these issues and all of these challenges that you've encountered. And so not only where are you at now, but where do you see the future?
Well, we're getting feedback all the time. So we have a guy named Jerry. He's in a veterans hospital. He's an Army retiree. He's 85 years old. He has ALS. Mm-hmm. And I know we found out about him and he said, I'm going to give this thing a try, And so he does a nice video testimonial for us. And I said, Jerry, that's really great. Can you do that again without cussing? He's so excited about it, because it works so well for him. We have another person who's got a spinal cord injury in Colorado, and they have a microphone close by. Believe it or not, we have a person who has no voice that uses will call.
Now, how does that work?
Well, you see, we're learning all the time. This person can control their eye. By blinking their eye, it triggers an iPad, which has the recorded message, I need help, calls help for that person. So we're constantly evaluating and learning new ways to do it. The good news is that back in the early 70s, there must be 15 big companies that created all these nurse call systems. They're very mature companies, and they have a huge installed base, and they have lots of salespeople, and none of them have anything that activates with voice. So they're all actively interested in bringing will call into their environment, okay? So now we're finding people that want to distribute our product for us. So a very large company formed in 1967 is Crest Healthcare. And they basically have thousands of products that they sell to some 50,000 institutions around the world. And they now resell the Will Call product for us. So we're starting to get some leverage. We're starting to get some dimension. Obviously, the word Will Call is trademarked. We have a patent pending on the technology, the process on it. So our mission here is to move this as deep as we can to as many different places as we can. Now, there are limits. Some moms, stay-at-home moms said, how about potty training for a little 3-year-old? I need help. It sends off an alarm in the house to have them come give their child some help. We're really focused very strongly in the healthcare space, and particularly with the people that need this. But it is becoming more of a standard of care. It could be used for anybody that needs help. You could eliminate all of the different needs for a nurse call button. You really could if you made this thing economically feasible and practical to get delivered.
Yeah.
I look back and try to think of some instances in history. Remember the paperclip?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody had a paperclip. Need a paperclip? Paperclip. If you're in the paperclip business and somebody walks in with a stapler, whoa, that changes the game, doesn't it? The status quo just got changed. So maybe Will Call can be the stapler changing the status quo of the nurse call device.
You know what I would say, though, is that this is not a better mousetrap. This is a revolution in bringing dignity back to care in a way that we probably have overlooked for generations. It's something that's so simple, yet so profound and so impactful. So from the finance side, you talked about some of the CMS requirements and the reimbursement and the regulatory and the compliance space, but just pure dignity back to care and thinking of all the patients and all the areas where they would need this. And what I love most, and if you don't mind talking a little bit about it, is kind of that next frontier, because as you mentioned, you now have a product that can go into the home. And I think for many people, that is probably a welcome relief, as they've got aging parents that are, probably in that phase of, do we need to potentially look at a facility? Can they still live in, either independent or assisted living? Like, what does that look like? And so, how has that market been received?
Well, there's a big market out there for taking care of the aging population, and it is a growing population. I'm contributing to it a little bit faster than you are, but we're all going to be checking into a new dimension of our life and support. And, we're living in this age of AI right now, and we're going to have all types of agents and robots and things that help. So it's a changing marketplace. Today, it's dominated primarily by a little medallion that you wear around your neck and you push a button, okay? And that's a profound way of doing things. If you fall, you push a button. Now, I've had aging parents, and I know people that refuse to wear the medallion. It's a matter of pride. I don't want to wear the thing.
Yep.
And furthermore, if I do fall, that's a tragic event, and I don't know what to do. Where is that button to push? Can I push that button? Things of that nature. So that's somewhat of a little bit of an encumbrance, but that's a dominant marketplace. So what we've done, we took the Will Call concept, the simplest way to call for help. You don't have a nurse call station at home, and you don't have a jack to plug a cable into, all right? So just like your iPhone, it's got a MagSafe connector on it. So we put a MagSafe connector on the back of a Will Call, so it just clamps into a little bedside device, all right? And then we've got these audio alarms. Think of them as doorbells, okay? Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however you want, plug them in any electrical outlet in your house, upstairs, in the garage, in the kitchen, wherever you want. 1 or 2 may be enough. You may want more than that. And if someone is in that guest room and they go, I need help, it sends those alarms off. Those alarms have 57 different tones you can choose from at 10 different levels, has a little light that flashes with it. But that's designed for the person who's at home taking care of somebody at home.
Yeah.
It doesn't call your iPhone. It doesn't call 911. You have to be there at the house. But what it does, I had a mother-in-law who almost made 100 years old, and she was 99 and 9 months, okay? And on occasion, she lived by herself, but on occasion, she'd have a hospital visit and come stay at our house. So I'd go in, she'd have our guest room. I'd say, Mimi, you need something? No, I'm fine. Come back in 10 minutes later. Mimi, you need something? I said, I'm fine. Okay, I get the message. I'm going to put a baby monitor in your room. No, you're not, okay? And I said, I'm going to put a Will Call here. Just say I need help. Okay. So she needs something. She just says, I need help. Ginger, my wife, is upstairs on the computer. She sees the alarm go off. She comes down. What do you need, Mimi? Okay. It's such an easy way to implement things. How does it work? The same frequency your garage door works off of, 433 megahertz. Okay. It's an FCC licensed frequency. And basically, we've designed and tuned this device to ring those doorbells when you say the words, I need help. It's a wonderful way of dealing with the home market. So,
well, it's incredible because as we look at where healthcare has to go and how much of it's being delivered outside the four walls, we think about age in place, we think about empowering caregivers, and you've done just that. And then going back to the Mimi story, you're not being surveillanced 24/7 like you would with a baby monitor. So we're not eavesdropping, we're not prying.
Yeah.
This only activates and it doesn't record if you need help.
So another marketplace that we're looking at is the hospice marketplace. Okay. Now, hospice has got a variable stay period. It might be 6 months. It might be a year or two. And once again, a lot of hospice takes place at home where someone's going to be there. And that varying degrees of ability to call and talk, depending on where you are on that journey. But it's a very handy device on a temporary basis for people that are doing hospice service. Another place is the assisted living community, where you may end up 5 or 6 adults, men, or 5 or 6 women living in a common house. And they have varying degrees of needs and assistance. Will Call works perfectly in that environment as well with the home version of it. And so each person can have their own designated ringer. So Jimmy's over here and his ringer's in the kitchen. It has a certain sound to it. And Tommy's over there and he has a different ring to his. So the person who's resident there at the assisted living center can take advantage of taking care of them that way. So there's a big market. A lot of people, we're just trying to help as many people as we can without causing a lot of difficulty.
Yeah.
So.
One is the simplicity of it that I love so much because, again, this is one of those things that we should have. You see inventions all the time and you're like, why didn't I think of that? Or why have we not had this? And this is, again, the necessity is the mother of all invention, but this is that story.
Yeah. I ask people that all the time. Some of the larger players in the marketplace, they've actually said, we thought about that 3 or 4 years ago. We thought that would be something cool, but, we just didn't see the demand for it. And it looks a little bit more complicated. We have to allocate resources. The ROI on that, for us, a big company, that's a distraction. We have other things that people are asking us to do. So we're going to do that instead. So we just bypass that. So a lot of things that are simple, they come from being curious. Okay. Yeah. Now, curiosity is compounding. So I tell people all the time, like I said, I've done several startups. I had a dance product called the Turnboard, and we sold hundreds of thousands of those. And I stumbled into that because I saw somebody break off the back of a chair and throw it on the floor and have somebody stand on it and do turning for ballet. And I thought, you just break the back off of that chair, that curved chair, I can make a device like that. And I can put a computer in it that can count your turns and just curious. So when you're curious, sometimes you find, excitement. In the case of Will Call, I should be on a beach somewhere retired. Okay. I didn't plan on doing this company. I didn't plan on, doing all this, but what happened was this situation arose that opened my eyes to a real problem that's significant, that's solvable. And I just felt compelled. I've got to do it.
Yeah. And we're glad that you are, because I can already see the impact that you've made. You can see the dignity that you're bringing back to care. More importantly, I can see the future where Will Call is the nurse call button.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly, it's got its upsides. Some of the things that people like about it a lot is the feedback that it provides. It actually lets you know that, and the next dimension here, we have a trial going on in Spain right now. Okay. Ayúdame means I need help in Spanish. Okay. So with the AI technology, we can actually implement this in several different languages. Okay. We're trying to get a runway project going over in India as well. These are all English speaking countries. Okay. Somewhat, at least Romance languages. And so there's a bigger market there. And with the right funding, the right growth, I think we can position this thing to really do a whole lot for a lot more people.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So you talk about the trials, and given the simplicity and the fact that it already works with the existing adapters, Is this something where you're looking or having to go through FDA? I wouldn't imagine so, that you just need to prove that it works and then
No,
you
it's
can
not.
scale.
It is not. It is not a medical device.
That's what I was thinking.
No,
Yeah.
we did research on that. It's not a medical device.
So
we
these aren't really trials so much as just pilots to make sure that the technology works.
Well, we would like the home version to be sold on Amazon. We're familiar with that. Well, they have compliance requirements. They like to see UL or ETL, safety. They also like the FCC certification since you're using a frequency. You don't want to be a troublemaker out there in the frequency space. So there's certain things that you need to do along that line. But as you look at compliance, CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, they have all types of safety initiatives. So we're trying to work that in. I'm in the process right now of building up an advisory board and getting people that have informatics and nurse background to really drive the mission of why this is important. It's not just a nice accessory for the patient. This is really a big deal for compliance and risk for the whole American Disabilities Act, the ADA Act. This fits all into that. It has a whole lot to do with risk and risk management.
Wow.
In a big time way, I think. So we think there's a lot more ground to plow here.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more work to do. We're far from finding a way out and finding our way to the beach. We're going to stick with this one for a while.
That's outstanding.
I think of all the startups I've done, I think this might be the most rewarding, if not financially, at least, emotionally, spiritually. You feel good. You get a call. I got a text this weekend, and I'd pull it out and read it to you, but I won't. But it basically said, "We got our will call. It's changed our life. We can't thank you and your brother Will enough for doing this." I mean, that's just like, wow. That's on a Saturday morning, someone sending you a text like that. That's incredible. I mean, that's a real big deal for you, How often you get a chance to make a difference like that, And, we've got hundreds of these in place. That's a lot of people, that you're actually helping their life be a whole lot better than it was.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost much to do that. Kindness is pretty cheap. It really is.
I will. One of the things you've always preached is ACE, the attitude of cheerful expectancy.
That's right.
And I think that you are a living embodiment of that exact phrase, and everything that you've accomplished and the dignity that you're bringing to care and the way that you're impacting and changing lives. And this is something, again, that we should have done generations ago.
Well, we're lucky, John, to be in an environment, the university having these 5 engineering students. They took this assignment to heart. They worked around the clock trying to come up with a viable product that would be demoable. The people from CBS, Robbie Owens, she's an incredible reporter and anchor for the news. She came out and interviewed the students. She interviewed Will. She did a nice documentary on that.
I saw that. I loved it, actually.
Yeah, that's such a great thing to help elevate the message, get the word out. These type of interviews like you're hosting, so powerful. We're so grateful for that type of environment, people that are willing to understand and share and help. So it's not just us on our lone beam. We office right now. We office in a joint facility that's owned by the University of Texas, Dallas, and the city of Richardson. Okay, and it's an incubator, and it's over there near the university, HDIQ. It's an incredible facility. It used to be StarTech. 15 years ago, it was an incubator that we had. I was involved with the Chamber of Commerce back then. I was the chair of the chamber, and we invested in this thing called StarTech to get, Richardson more focused on startups and things like that. So we're just in a really rich environment where it's healthy and reasonable to get good results. We're very fortunate from that perspective. So a lot of goodwill out there is what I'm grateful for.
I love it.
A lot of goodwill.
I love it. Well, the mascot there is the Comet. So you guys are chasing the stars and creating dreams every day. And I love the work that you're doing. I guess for where you guys are, like, what does the next step look like for Will Call and for the audience, for folks that have an interest or want to be involved? What does that look like, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, we've got a great website. It's Will Call Nurse. .com. That's just all one word, willcallnurse.com. That's the easiest way. We have a test drive program that we offer at no cost. If you know somebody that could benefit by using a will call device, simply reach out to us on our website. There's a form to fill out, and you can basically, get a will call sent to you right away. We'll send one to you tomorrow. Okay. We'll talk to you, make sure that it's suitable for what you're trying to accomplish. And that's the best thing that, people can do is look around and find something that is necessary like that. Years ago, it was on the Tonight Show. They had Conrad Hilton. He was the founder of the wonderful Hilton hotels. And, they asked him this question. They said, so, Sir Conrad, what would you like the American public to do? What would your call to action be to them? And he says, well, I could say something really heavy duty, philosophical, something really deep thinking. But if you stay at one of my hotels, if you just take the shower curtain and put it on the inside of the tub, we'd really appreciate it. Okay. And so my call out to everybody is that if you know somebody that could benefit, that needs some type of assistance like this for their home or for a skilled nursing facility, for a hospice environment, just give us a call, because this is the mission we're on. We want to serve and help others.
I love it. Well, you've had such a profound impact on my life, my friends' lives, my colleagues' lives. And I know that with Will Call, you're going to continue to do the same at scale. The ripple effect of this invention will go far and wide. And this has just been a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope all of our listeners out there are going and checking this out, because I can't wait to see where you are in the next 3 months, 6 years. This is, I think, going to revolutionize the way that we bring dignity back to care. So thank you so much, Bob, for carving out the time and visiting with us today. And thank you for all that you've done with Will Call. And
I am humbled and honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Pinnacle is your partner in the business of healthcare, nationally recognized for helping clients manage risk, improve performance, and drive innovation. For more information, visit our website, askphc.com. For more information on our guest or to learn more, please visit their website.